So here's a question I've been wrestling throughout this week with, and it goes like this. Why would God wait so long to send Jesus to earth? Why allow so much time to take place between the fall and the cross? And as we think about these kinds of things, is there possibly a lesson here about patience and learning how to wait for God along the way? You ready? Let's go. Now, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you're waiting around for something to take place and time around you just seems to slow down. For me, it happens when I'm trapped at a red light at an empty intersection and I'm just waiting for the light to change. Or perhaps when I'm at a restaurant waiting for my food and my stomach is just like growling.
Oh, here comes the rest. All right, get back here.
In moments like this, waiting can really suck. For me, I think back to the few months that took place between me proposing to Emily and when we finally got married. Objectively speaking, it actually wasn't that long since we ended up getting married about 365 days after our first date. But to me, time seemed to crawl to a slow, and here's why. You see, there was this time frame of a few months when we were engaged and we were just doing like the whole long distance thing. I had just taken a job teaching at the Bible College in Philadelphia, and she was on the other side of the country finishing up a master's in occupational therapy in California. Now, those of you guys who've ever had to experience this kind of thing know how sucky trying to manage different schedules, different time zones, and still retain something that resembles like a normal relationship. And so when I look at the story of Adam and Eve, this is what jumps to my mind, because every single day, Adam and Eve, they're communing face to face with God in the garden, and then they screw everything up. They eat the fruit and they blame each other, and they're kicked out of the garden. And it's at this point that God gives them a promise. It's a promise of deliverance, that eventually one of their descendants is going to be born and eventually pave the way for reconciliation and allow them to be reunited back with their home, and more importantly, back with the God that they love.
Reunited, and it feels so good.
Now, Galatians 4 says this, but when the right time came, God sent his son, born of a woman, subject to the law. And when I read that passage, I'm thinking to myself, how in the world does this make sense? What about that time specifically makes it the quote-unquote right time? I mean, imagine how disappointed Adam and Eve must have been when they're promised the deliverer and they finally have two sons and they think that this is the answer to all their problems. And then guess what happens? Yeah, Cain kills Abel and their hopes are destroyed. So here's my question. Why did God wait so long to send Jesus? Some scholars estimate the biblical account to be around 4,000 years between Adam and Jesus. And if you take other approaches, then this time is even longer. So what about this particular time frame, this window, this season in history that makes it such an ideal time for Jesus to come? And could there be a lesson for us today about waiting for God's timing? As always, I have a few theories I'd like to kick around, but before I do that, let me know what you think in the comment section below. So now, what are some reasons that God could have been waiting until then? Let me give you my answer in 3 parts. Part 1, God needed to wait for sin to be fully revealed as evil and wicked as it truly was. If you actually refer back to one of my older videos that I did on why God didn't just like kill the devil when he sinned and rebelled in heaven, you remember that one of the arguments I made is that had God killed the devil and removed sin right away, then the universe may still only actually serve God out of fear. Now, if that idea doesn't make sense to you, pause this video and check out this one right over here by clicking the eye in the sky. So think about how this works. Genesis 6 talks about life before the flood. The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. At this time, sin is being revealed as this horrible and destructive thing. Now, fast forward a little bit in the story, and you see the awareness of this evil of sin is growing. We get to see the wickedness of nations that are left to their own devices, and really what we see is the fruit of a society without God, what it looks like. One of the most stark examples is with the pagan deity Moloch, or the god of the Canaanites. Leviticus describes how the followers of Moloch participated in child sacrifices, where parents willingly brought their newborn babies to the giant statue of Moloch. This statue would have his hands outstretched over an open flame, and the parents would place their newborn babies onto the burning hands to cook their children alive.
Please, no! 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 No!
Yeah, that's some pretty gross and terrible stuff, but it's an essential part, apparently, in revealing the true nature of sin. Part number 2, prophecy actually needed to be fulfilled. Now, I won't be able to get into all the nitty-gritty on this one, but here's a Cliff Notes version of it all. God gave several prophecies. Some scholars estimate there to be several hundreds of prophecies that needed to be fulfilled by the coming Messiah. Now, this was done intentionally so that the people who were looking for the deliverer could know with certainty that this was exactly who God had sent and not some imposter playing dress up.
You're an imposter!
And reason number 3, this was a strategic decision on God's part. This is actually part of the argument that I'm still kind of trying to work through in my own mind, but here it goes. Jesus came during a relative time frame of peace. Yes, the Jews were still under Roman rule and they weren't exactly pacifist, but there's a reason why historians will describe this time frame in history as the Pax Romana, or the Pax Romana, or the Peace of Rome. For a period of a few hundred years, there was an unprecedented season of peace, and the result was an explosion of thought and culture. Prior to this time frame, progress was oftentimes slowed down since war after war would take place and people would just die. Cities would have to be rebuilt and everything has to kind of start over again. For the first time in history, you could actually travel by land and sea with relative safety. Rome had actually developed the most amazing system of roads that had ever been created. In fact, when I was in Rome last year, we actually got to drive around on many of the same roads that were built back in the day. Additionally, there was only one common language that was spoken. Prior to this time, in order to communicate and to have information spread, you'd have to learn other languages in order to talk to different people groups. But now, if you understood Greek, you could actually speak to well over a third of the entire world.
Wow.
Another thing to think about is the Jews. Now, of course, while many Jews did happen to miss the coming of Jesus, there was still something that God was able to do with them. At the time, the requirement was that they would all meet at Jerusalem from all over the world in order to come together and to attend the feasts. It's actually at the Feast of Passover that Jesus is crucified, and later on at the Feast of Pentecost that Peter is seen preaching to the thousands. The results are that thousands and thousands of Jews from all over the world would come and hear the message and later go back to their homes and villages with the message of Christ. And so as a result, this message explodes all around the world. There's more to be said, but let's pause right there for a second, because ultimately the answer could be wrong. I don't know for sure, but I think there's a more important lesson for us to learn through this story. One of my favorite authors says this, that God's purposes know no haste or delay, or you could even quote the words of Gandalf the Grey.
A wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
And for me, the decision that I want to make every single day is to choose to put my faith in not myself, but my faith in Jesus Christ. This video was brought to you ad-free by a small group of viewers called patrons. If you enjoyed this video and found value in the channel and want to support this ministry, you can do so at patreon.com/thatchristianvlogger. At this point, there aren't any perks like bonus videos or free swag, but for as little as the cost of 1 cup of coffee per month,
Let's talk about something important. Put that coffee down.
you can help make sure that we make videos like this in the years to come. Thank you very much. See you guys in the next video. God bless.